Great job.
Well, you know.
Said it was all gonna be fixed next week.
Oh, yeah. Why don't we say, under promise, over deliver, Amy, okay? But anyway, you know, Amy has been working hard, and drainage has been something that I think I've mentioned to each of you is kind of my thing, because as a construction law attorney, a lot of my work deals with lawsuits that arise from drainage issues. And we've had some challenges recently. We had to put down a stop work order on Sunset Hills. And this morning I had a meeting about Lock and Green's expansion that I'll talk with Linda and Ralph about a little bit more in detail here. We've had a change of ownership. Shady Valley Golf Course got sold to a new company. And that company is a construction company, and this is the only country club that construction company owns. So we're trying to figure out what's going on there and trying to nail that down. Inside the city, Gunn Junior High, the city put its foot down and told the school district that if you're going to build at Gunn Junior High, you need to fix the drainage onto Cannon Gate and your football field problem. And because they have to have that school open in time for the Dual Language Fine Arts Academy kids from Corey and, oh my gosh, the one up on the north side, it used to be Roquemore. I can't remember the name. Well, they're about to get in. Yeah, the Jones, yes. They're going to get into junior high here soon, so Gunn had to be open. And they finally came around. And I spoke with staff this morning, and they have fixed, by doubling the size of their detention pond at Gunn Junior High, the flow of water coming off that football field. Now,
Thank you.
I mean, you have to give Trey and the rest of the city staff some credit, because they really put their foot down, and the school district was not happy, and they had to comply. So, to speak candidly, what I've been shocked at is how sometimes the city and school district in our community don't coordinate, or sometimes work in silos and don't talk to each other. And I'm trying to work to resolve that. You know, I share a personal trainer with Bowie Hogg, so every Monday, Wednesday morning, Bowie and I have a little city school district summit about everything that's going on.
Good for
okay? There are other issues. You know, we have another bond package. We've had concerns expressed about the new parking lot at Ditto.
There's going to be another bond?
Well, no, the bond package is going to be built and implemented. All that money and all those projects is going to be designed and put into place, not another vote.
Okay.
And so, I've expressed concern to the school district about the decrease in permeable surface caused by the construction of the new parking lot at Ditto Elementary School. And they kind of got a little mad at me for bringing that up, because I referenced what happened at Gunn and said we don't want that to happen again. And they're a little sensitive about it. But you know what? It's nobody who owns a house now, that's their largest asset, should have it in any way negatively impacted by adjacent construction, to the extent under the law the city can keep that from happening.
You keep talking to Bowie.
Yeah. But it's not just school district. It's a challenge we face across the board, as Amy will talk to you, knows about. You know, we try to rewrite our design criteria manual to let design people know ahead of time what they need to do to address drainage issues before they even start the design process. That also goes in line with some other challenges we have with having to approve plans by legislative changes that decrease the amount of time the city has to review plans. But this is a long haul, and you know, we're supposed to have the comprehensive plan done by early 2021 was the last one I talked with Mindy. Is that that's still on course, right? And the FEMA 100-year floodplain maps, are they all out yet?
No, not yet. We're still pending FEMA review on a few of them, but I mean, for the most part, the capital projects have all been identified and are being incorporated into the comprehensive plan process.
I mean, because I know people in this house, like Glenn, I saw in the 100-year floodplain map that your house is now in the 100-year floodplain. So this is a very real and personal issue for people who, in biggest retirement asset is many times their home. Yeah. All right? But we got to have development, and we've got to have redevelopment, okay? We've got to have a way to take things that don't look so nice in this city and find some way to bring private capital to bear to replace those not so nice things, so we can regenerate and regrow and have the city once again become a prosperous place. Let me tell you, it's happening. When I was walking neighborhoods during the election, I walked Woodland West, and I was always worried about that neighborhood because those houses are 1,800 square feet and built in the 60s and 70s. And Arlington's greatest challenge is its 1960s, 1970s, and 1980 housing product that does not compare favorably to the brand new mansions in Aledo, Southlake, and Colleyville and Grapevine. Let's just be honest. We have old houses, all right? And what we have to do is find a way to bring people who have their own money into this city to reinvest in those homes and update them. But what was really very pleasant was when I walked Woodland West, over half the houses' doors I knocked on, and I was only knocking on voters' doors, were young families in their 30s, early 30s with young kids, and they'd have plaster on their arms, and they would be ripping out the dark 80s living wood wall paneling. And I'd say, why did you bet on Arlington? And they said, well, the schools here are good. I can afford this house because I have a lot of college debt, and I know I can fix it up. Thank God for Chip and Joanna Gaines, okay? All right, I'm working to have a Chip and Joanna Gaines Day in Arlington where we can publicize rehabbing houses and take them all over town and have a celebration, because every single millennial thinks they can fix up an old Arlington house. And that is to all our benefit, all right? But in order for people to feel comfortable reinvesting their money, oh, and they also mentioned our trees. All the time they would talk about our beautiful trees in Arlington. It's very interesting, because I'll be honest, a few years ago, a young arrogant Andy opposed the tree ordinance.
Oh,
now
wow.
I see that it's one of the most important things we have, all right? So anyway, we've got something else that's coming down the pike I got to tell you about. You probably saw the hotel development. That's all great. Well, it's looking very likely that the city council is going to put an economic development sales tax on the May ballot. As you know, in Arlington, you pay 8% sales tax on everything you buy in this city. The city council is having advanced discussions about taking that remaining 1/4 cent sales tax that we don't collect and joining the other 700 Texas cities that have an economic development corporation funded by sales tax. Okay? I've been skeptical of this. I will tell you the rest of the council is not skeptical about this. So it's going to happen. The thing that I'm very interested in is I want it to be reauthorized by the voters at least every 2 years. I'd prefer for it to be an 8-cent sales tax with another 8 cent towards property tax reduction, but I'm probably going to not have the votes to make that happen. So I wanted to let you know that one thing I did notice in the data that I asked that the city manager provide me was that when you look around Arlington, look around the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and you color in all the cities that have an economic development corporation funded by a sales tax. Southlake, Grapevine, Colleyville, Westlake, Mansfield, Pantego. A lot of the cities that, like my little sister moved away from Arlington about 3 years ago because she said Arlington was getting too old and ugly and didn't look nice anymore, and she wanted to live somewhere clean and new. So she moved to Grapevine. A lot of the places that Arlington residents leave Arlington to go move to use economic development corporations to try to make their cities look better and nicer. That's something I'm considering when I evaluate these proposals that are on the table right now. I don't like higher taxes. I really don't. But I also understand that now in the trend lines, residential property taxes pay more to support city services than commercial property taxes. And that's never been the case in Arlington until recently. And we have to find a way to change that trend line to where commercial properties pay more in taxes so we can keep property taxes on your homes lower. So there's a lot of complex dynamics about this. I know if I sat down with Ralph Sobel and asked him what he thought, he'd say, hell no. Because Ralph...
Say that's why there's term limits when no one on council voted the
Correct. But I'm still thinking about this, and I welcome your input. Because one thing I also don't like is sales tax abatements. And whenever we have to incentivize a project, because we don't have the ability to write an upfront check, we usually end up giving people sales tax abatements on the back end. And most of the benefit from new development comes off sales tax after the project's built. Like, you know that Summit Racing down on I-20? I had no idea what that thing was. The property value, the city wrote them $1 million check to build, okay, up front. There's no sales tax or property tax abatements on that project. The property value of that piece of property went up 4,000%. The city also in sales tax makes almost $2 million a year in sales tax off that one business, all right? Can you believe that?
What does it do?
It sells like customized car parts, so you can fix up your car and put like flames on the side, I guess, and turbos and stuff like that. So if you ever want one of those on your car, go down there and buy it. But anyway, so there's a lot of moving parts in place, and that's something you'll need to educate yourself about coming up and down the pike, because if it does happen and it goes into effect, you will pay another quarter cent in increased sales tax whenever you buy something in Arlington. That being said, the last studies that we had show that about 50% of the sales tax income in Arlington comes from people that don't live in Arlington.
What about all the people that live in Arlington that are below the poverty rate?
They pay sales tax because sales tax is a very regressive tax. You can't avoid it. The poorest people are the ones that have to buy bread no matter what. Rich people don't have to buy bread because they have more options, you know? Nothing's better than having the blessing of going to the grocery store and not having to look at prices when you buy something. But a lot of people in Arlington do have to look at the price of everything they buy. So that's a big issue in the city right now. It's probably not getting talked about too much. So let me know what you think.
May I ask a question about that? How much does the city hope to generate from that additional quarter
A
cent?
quarter cent in sales tax
year.
revenue would raise $17 million a year.
Real? Wow.
Now remember, Arlington's the only major city out of, in the Metroplex that doesn't have, well, they have an economic development corporation, but it has no funding because we've never assessed a sales tax for that. Now here is one other thing that I asked the city manager about. I said, can you use money from this economic development sales tax to buy old apartment complexes and tear them down? And well, it turns out you can.
And
To a certain
that's
extent.
the main question that I would have. Define economic development as coming under the sales.
There is a large list I need to give you. I need to disseminate to you all the things you can use it for. Say that, you know, one of the banes of our existence in this city has been old, substandard, crappy apartment complexes that were built in the 70s before we doubled the construction standards for apartments in the early 2000s, when apartment complexes were adult only. North Arlington apartment complexes used to be the hippest, coolest place to live around here. My aunt lived in them. It was like the Village in North Dallas. I mean, you were young, you were hip, you hung out in Arlington, and you had all your, you're wearing your bell bottoms and toting around and listening to disco, I guess. But
Adults only.
But in 1984, the Fair Housing Act was amended to eliminate the ability of landlords to discriminate against people with children. And overnight, all those apartment complexes changed. The school district had not planned for that. The city had not planned for that when they approved all of them in close proximity. That, along with the change of the building standards in Southeast Arlington that allowed for smaller houses with lower building standards made in the late 80s, were the two biggest mistakes the city ever made. And we're paying for it, and we're trying to get out from under those bad decisions.
Yeah, all those hundreds of drive-through restaurants and low-paying jobs that, yeah.
Legitimate concern. But we also know that government planning can't solve all problems, because we wanted to have a high-tech corridor along I-20, and we held all that land out for all those years saying, government says this should all be high-tech development. Well, the market, it never happened. So there's a limit to what government can do to influence private capital. So the key issue is, what is the highest and best use of your tax dollars to leverage it into the biggest amount of private capital and private money that can make this city better, so it's not all on your back and that it benefits you? Those are all things I've been struggling with this past year.
Could that economic development tax money also be used to fix the infrastructure and stormwater management that's going to come with all this development?
That's a question I don't know the answer to, and I've asked it. All right, so I don't know if, Amy, do you know off the top of your head? See, I think the initial answer I got was no, But what you can do is say that somebody comes in with a development and gets an incentive, you can make a condition of the incentive agreement that they provide additional stormwater drainage relief.
Or put an eighth on stormwater and infrastructure and put an eighth on the economic development.
Yeah, I mean, I asked about that too, and
Because you're gonna have to have, eventually, you're gonna have to have the infrastructure and the stormwater. It's not getting any better.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think at the end of the day, when the city staff is finished, we're gonna have over $500 million worth of stormwater projects that we recognize are out there. Would you say that's a guesstimate?
Probably low.
I think that was on their website.
I mean, I don't want to put you on the
It's a
spot.
starting point, basically. We expect as we get the plan worked out, like, and, you know, looking at inflation over time too, that number is gonna be, you know,
So
there.
the city budget every year is around $325 million. And we might end up with $500 million in identified drainage projects. That's why the comprehensive drainage plan is important. We're going to identify them as red, meaning it's about to flood, interlocking, so we better frickin' fix it now. Yellow, as in if things get built in this area, it could have a serious problem. So if you're going to develop in this area,